Frank Sinatra dies at 82. Matchless Stylist of Pop by Stephen Hawden, May 16th, 1998. Frank Sinatra, the singer and actor whose extraordinary voice elevated popular song into an art, died on Thursday night in Los Angeles. He was 82. The cause was a heart attack, said his publicity agent, Susan Reynolds. Miss Reynolds said his fourth wife, Barbara, his son, Frank Jr., and daughters, Tina and Nancy, were at his side at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. She said he would be given a private funeral. Widely held to be the greatest singer in American pop history and one of the most successful entertainers of the 20th century, Sinatra was also the first modern pop superstar. He defined that role in the early 40s, when his first solo appearance provoked the kind of mass pandemonium of the later greeted Elvis Presley and the Beatles. During a show business career that spanned more than 50 years and comprised recordings, film and television, as well as countless performances in nightclubs, concert halls and sport arenas, Sinatra stood a singular mirror of the American psyche. His evolution from the idealistic crooner of the early 40s to the sophisticated swinger of the 50s and 60s seemed to personify the country's lost innocence. During the World War II, Sinatra's tender romanticism served as the dreamy emotional link between millions of women and their husbands and boyfriends fighting overseas. Reinventing himself in the 50s, the starry-eyed boy next door turned into the cosmopolitan man of the world, a bruised romantic with a thug guy streak and a song for every emotional season. In a series of brilliant conceptual albums, he codified a musical vocabulary of adult relationship with which millions identified. The haunted voice heard on a jukebox in the wee small hours of the morning, lamenting the end of a love affair, was the same voice that invited the world to come fly with me to exotic realms in never-ending party. Sinatra appeared in 58 films and won the Academy Award as Best Supporting Actor of his portrayal of Vestiti misfit soldier Maggio in From Here to Eternity. As an actor, he could communicate the same complex mixture of emotional honesty, vulnerability, and cockiness that he projected as a singer, but he often chose his roles indifferently or unwisely. It was a singer that he exerted the strongest cultural influence. Following his idol Bing Crosby, who had pioneered the use of the microphone, Sinatra transformed the popular singing by infusing lyrics with a personal, intimate point of view that conveyed in a steady current of eroticism. The skinny blue-eyed crooner, quickly nicknamed The Voice, made horses of Bobby Soxer's Swan in the 40s with an extraordinarily smooth and flexible baritone that he wielded with matchless skill. His mastery of long-lined phrasing inspired imitation by many other male crooners, notably Dick Haymes, Vic Damone, and Tony Bennett in the 40s and 50s, and most recently the pop jazz star Harry Connick Jr. After The Voice lost in velvety youthfulness, Sinatra's interpretation grew more personal and idiosyncratic, so that its performance became a direct expression of his personality and his mood of the moment. In expressing anger, petulance, and bravado, attitudes that had largely been excluded from the acceptable vocabulary of pop feeling, Sinatra paved the way for the unfiltered vocal aggression of rock singers. The changes in Sinatra's vocal timbre coincided with a perspicuous career dashed in the late 40s and the early 50s. But in 1953, Sinatra made one of the most spectacular career comebacks in show business history, re-emerging as a coarser-voiced, jazzier interpreter of popular standards who put a more aggressive personal stamp on his songs. Almost single-handedly, he helped lead a revival of vocalized swing music that took American pop to a new level of musical sophistication. Coinciding with the rise of a long-playing record album, his 50s recording along Ella Fitzgerald's songbook albums, saluting individual composers, were instrumental in establishing canon of American pop song literature. With Nelson Riddle, his most talented arranger, Sinatra defined the criteria for sound, style, and song selection in pop recording during the pre-Beatles era. The aggressive up-tempo style of Sinatra's mature years spawned a genre of punchy, rhythmic belting associated with Las Vegas, which he was instrumental in establishing and popularizing an entertainment capital. By the late 50s, Sinatra had become so much the personification of American show business success that his life and his art became emblematic of the temper of the times. Except perhaps for Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy magazine, probably nobody did more to create a male ideal in the 50s. For years, Sinatra seemed the embodiment of the heart-drinking, hedonistic swinger who could have his pick of women, and so was the leader of a party-loving entourage. That personality and wardrobe bore the part of his friendly Jimmy Van Heusen, the talented songwriter and man about town who liked the insociality slang and the raincoat over his shoulder, was in turn imitated by many other show business figures. It was a style Sinatra never abandoned. Even in his later years, he would often stroll onto a stage with a drink on his hand. On a deeper level, Sinatra's career and public image touched many aspects of American cultural life. For millions, his ascent from humble Italian-American roots in Hoboken was a symbol of ethnic achievement, and more than most entertainers, he used his influence to support political candidates. His change of the allegiance from pro-Roosevelt Democrat in the 40s to pro-Reagan Republican in the 80s paralleled a seismic shift in American politics. By the end of his career, Sinatra's annual income was estimated to tens of millions of dollars from concert, record albums, real estate ventures, and holdings in several companies, including a missile part concern, a private line, Reprise Records, which he founded, Airtains, Sinatra spelled backward, Production, and Sinatra Enterprises. Songs of Love. Inspiring romances. Sinatra left his imprint on scores of popular songs, and was the background voice, it seemed, from the romances of most Americans, from the earliest to the second time around. Among the standards he recorded at least 3 times were All of or Nothing at All, Angel Eyes, Autumn in New York, I Concentrate on You, I Get a Kick Out of You, I'll Be Seeing You, I'll Never Smile Again, I've Got a Crush on You, I've Got You Under My Skin, Nancy, Night and Day, One of My Baby, September Song, and Stormy Weather. His personal signature songs include Put Your Dreams Away and later Young Heart. All the Way, It Was a Very Good Year, Strangers in the Night, My Way, and New York, New York. For decades, his private life with its many romances, feuds, brawls, and association with gangsters was grist for the gossip columns. But he also had a reputation for spontaneous generosity, for helping singers who were starting out, and for supporting friends who were in need. And over the years, he gave hundreds of millions of dollars to various philanthropies. Sinatra was born in Hoboken on December 12, 1915. The only child of Martin Sinatra, a boilermaker and sometime boxer from Catania, Sicily, and his wife, Natalie Garavant, who was nicknamed Dolly. The young Francis Albert Sinatra attended Dave Rue Jr. High School and Demers High School in Hoboken. He decided to become a singer either after attending a Crosby concert or seeing a Crosby film sometime in 1931 or 1932. His mother encouraged his ambition, allowing him to drop out of high school. In 1935, after 2 years of local club dates, he joined 3 other young men from Hoboken who called themselves the Three Flashes. The quartet renamed itself the Hoboken Four and won first prize of Measure Bow's original amateur hour. After several months with the group, Sinatra decided to go it alone, and in the late 30s, he had his first important nightclub engagement at the Rustic Cabin, a roadhouse in Alpine. Local radio exposure brought both him the attention of Harry James, the trumpet player who had recently left Benny Goodman to form his own band. James seen Sinatra for $65 a week, and the singer made his first concert appearance with the James Band in June 1939, and the first recording the next month. A new family and a new fame. Early that year, he married his longtime sweetheart, Nancy Barbato. They had 3 children: Nancy, who was born in 1940, Franklin Wayne, born in 1944, and Christina, born in 1948. 6 months after Sinatra signed with Harry James, Tommy Dorsey invited him to join his band, which was far more popular. Released without protest from his contract by James, Sinatra remained with Dorsey from January 1940 until September 1942. His first successful record with the band was Polka Dots and Moonbeams. 6 months after joining Dorsey, he scored his first #1 hit, I'll Never Smile Again, a dreamy ballad he sang with the Pied Pipers, the vocal group then led by Joe Stafford. Determined to be the first singer since Crosby to have a successful solo career, he split from Dorsey, who held him to a contract that gave the band leader 43% of the singer's income for the next decade. Eventually, Sinatra, with his record label Columbia and his booking agency MCA, both out the contract. In addition to I'll Never Smile Again, Sinatra left behind several classic yearly recordings with Dorsey. They include Stardust, This Love of Mine, and There Are Such Things. Sinatra's last concert with Dorsey was in September 1942. 3 months later, he made history at the age of 27 with his first solo appearance at the Paramount Theater in New York City. Billed as an extra added attraction on a program headlined by Benny Goodman, Sinatra appears on December 30 and set off a public hysteria that made headlines. Within weeks, he had signed lucrative contracts with Columbia Records, RKO, Pictures, and the radio program Your Hit Parade. The adulation reached a high point on October 12, 1944, the opening day of a 3-week return engagement at the Paramount, when 30 million fans, most of them Bobby Soxer, formed a frenzied mob in Times Square. It was the war years, and there was a great loneliness. Sinatra, who was kept from the draft by a Puntrect Yardum, later recorded, I was the boy in every corner drugstore who'd gone off, drafted to the war. That was all. From 1943 to 1945, he was the lead singer on Youth Parade, and at the same time began recording for Columbia. Because of a musician strike, the accompaniment on his first several recording sessions for the label was a vocal chorus called the Bobby Trucker Singers, instead of an orchestra. In June 1943, however, Columbia re-released a recording he had made in September 1939 with Harry James. The recording All or Nothing at All, which has sold 8,000 copies in its first release, sold over 1 million. Once the musician strike was settled in November 1944, Sinatra began recording with Axel Stortal, who had been a trombonist and lead arranger with Tommy Dorsey. Stortal's with string-laced setting for Sinatra's recording Silhouette, a rearing voice that were the writer compared to Warren Veltin. Until Sinatra left Columbia for Capitol Records in 1953, Stortal remained his principal arranger. So he also brilliantly exploited the songs of Sammy Cahn and Jules Stein, who tailored many of their ballads to Sinatra's voice and style. Riding High in April, shot down in May. Sinatra's first movie appearance was in 1940, singing with the Dorsey Band in Las Vegas Nights. He made his movie acting debut in 1943 in Iger and Iger, a bit of forth that was described by Bosey Kraftwerk movie critic for the New York Times as a slapdash setting for the incredibly readings of The Boys. The film was followed by Step Lively and Arkansas Away, for the first of 3 movies in which Sinatra played the Gene Kelly sidekick. In these early films, Sinatra, after wearing a sailor suit and projecting a skinny soulfulness, played a wide-eyed innocent who was shy with women. In 1945, he also made The House I Live In, a 10-minute patriotic plea for racial and religious tolerance that won him a Special Academy Award. Like his mother, Sinatra was an ardent Democrat and supporter of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. He visited the White House in 1944 and campaigned for Roosevelt in his bid of 4th term as president. Sinatra's popularity remained at a peak through in 1946, when he had 15 hit singles. That it began a gradual slide that steepened after 1948, and it bottomed in 1952. As early as November 1947, an appearance at Capitol Theatre in New York drew disappointing attendance. Only 4 Sinatra singles made the top 10 in 1947, and the number dropped to 1 in 1948. Although he had shown himself to have the engaging screen presence, his film career had not made him a top box office star. From 1946 to 1949, he appeared in 5 MGM musicals: Till the Clouds Roll By, It Happened in Brooklyn, The Kissing Bandit, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and On the Town, and the RKO film The Miracle of the Bells, in which he has miscast as praised. After 2 more unsuccessful pictures, Double Dynamite and Meet Danny Wilson, his movie career all but evaporated. Part of the public came after the columnist Robert York denounced him in 1947 for having socialized with deported gangster Lucky Luciano in Cuba. The suggestion that the singer consorted with criminals made him a target of the conservative press, which resented his pro-Roosevelt political stance. For the rest of Sinatra's career, stories of his relation with the underworld dogged him, and he reacted angrily to the charges. Divorce and remarriage career troubles. While his career was in decline in the late 1940s, his marriage to Nancy Barbato also unrelated. In 1949, he had begun an affair with the movie star Ava Gardner. The relationship became public to the next year, and on November 7th, 1951, 1 week after his divorce was final, he married her in Philadelphia. Passionate but stormy, the marriage lasted just less than 2 years. MGM announced their separation in October 1943, and they were divorced in 1957. She died in 1990. Those personal upheavals, including a suicide attempt, coincided with increasing tension between Sinatra and Columbia Records after Mitch Miller took the company's creative reins in 1950. In an ever more desperate search for a hit single, Sinatra let himself be coerced into recording inferior material. The most notorious example being Mama Will Bark in 1951, novelty duet with the television personality Dagmar that introduced dog imitation by Donald Bain. Although his voice had begun to reflect the strain he was under, he still made some powerful recordings, including April in Paris, The Anguished I'm a Fool to Want You, and recordings of Castle Rock and the Birth of the Blues that anticipated the swinging Sinatra of the mid-50s. Sinatra's phenomenal resurgence began in 1953 with the release of From Here to Eternity, Fred Zinnemann's film version of James Jones' best-selling novel about American GIs in Hawaii on the eve of the World War II. His portrayal of Maggio, the combative Italian-American soldier who is beaten to death in a stockade. In Spirit Unbroken, won him rave reviews and Oscar and regained public sympathy. In April 1953, Sinatra, then 37, had signed with Capitol Records. A cautious deal, the contract was only 1 year, with no advance. Sinatra arrived at Capitol just when his voice had lost most of its youthful sheen, but the move proved fortunate. Only 5 years earlier, the long-playing record had been introduced, and the longer form encouraged Sinatra, who brought remarkable introspective depth to the interpretation of lyrics, to make cohesive album-length emotional statements. In his second recording session for Capitol in late April 1953, Sinatra was teamed by Nelson Riddle, who became the most important of the several arrangers with whom they worked during his decade with the label. A trombonist who had also worked with Tommy Dorsey, Riddle pioneered in augmenting a big band lineup with strings, and he was the master of an elegant pop impressionism that enhanced Sinatra's vocal image of urban sophistication. On a series of classic pop albums for Capitol, the singer and the arranger virtually reinvented the swing music for a more opulent era. That process began with their first single release, I've Got the World on a String, which hit the pop charts in the summer of 1953. It continued with the album Songs of Young Lovers, released in early 1954, and Swing Easy, which came out 6 months later. The collaboration is its artistic peak of 3 albums. In the Wee Small Hours, a 16-cut collection of Class Torch songs in a quietly anguished baritone, was released in the spring of 1955. Songs for Swinge's Lover, released a year later, define Sinatra in its adult swinging mood. It includes that many regards as its greatest recorded performance, Cole Porter's I've Got You Under My Skin. Frank Sinatra sings for Only the Lonely, released in the summer of 1958, expanded on the mournful introspective tone of Wee Small Hours by adding shadings that were at once jazzier and more operatic. The album, which included his classical recording of What's New inspired by Linda Ronstadt's hit 1983 album's What's New, which in turn spurred a revival interest in elegant 50s pop styles. Sinatra's Capitol albums were among the first so-called concept albums, in the way they explored different adult approaches to love and invoked various aspects of the singer's personality. These were the fun-loving hedonist, Song of Spring and Lovers, and its equally brilliant follow-up as Singing a Prayer, the romantic confidant, the jet-set playboy, and the hardened sensation seeker, the hitmaker and prolific actor. In 1959, Come Dance With Me, a heart-swinging album arranged by Willie May, won Sinatra's first Grammy Awards for Album of the Year and Best Male Vocal Performance, and stayed on sales chart for 140 weeks, longer than any other Sinatra album. Sinatra's career as a maker of hit singles was also rejuvenated. Young at 30, which hit the pop charts in February 1954, reached number 2 on Billboard Pop Singles chart, and Learning the Blues reached number 1 the following year. His other significant hits from the late 50s included Love and Marriage, The Tender Trap, Hey, Jealous Lover, All the Way, and Witchcraft. During this period, the versatile team of Ginny Van Huysen and Sammy Chan, who had become partners in 1954, functioned almost as Sinatra's house songwriter, supplying both movie song hits and title songs for albums. After From Here to Eternity, Sinatra's movie career boomed, with the roles many varied. He played the perennial gambler Nathan Ditra in the film adaptation of the Broadway musical Guys and Dolls, a heroin addicted in The Man with the Golden Arm, and the same year an army investigator tracking a would-be assassin in the political thriller The Manchurian Candidate. His performance in The Man with the Golden Arm won him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. In his better movie roles, playing a would-be presidential assassin in Suddenly, the comedian Joe Lewis in The Joker is Wild, and vulnerable intellectual in Some Came Running, Sinatra conveyed the outsider-edgy volatility that matched the film-nourished mood of his more introspective albums. His roles in the film musical High Society and Pal Joy, as well as Guy and Dolls, effectively played off his scrappy, streetwise image. Assessing his film career, the critic David Thompson said Sinatra had a pervasive influence on American acting. He glamorized the fatalistic outsider. He made his own anger intriguing, and in the late 50s especially he was one of our darkest male icons. Sinatra is a noir sound, he said, like saxophones, furgons, gunfire, and the quiet weeping of women in the background. Chairman of the board, leader of the Rat Pack. Sinatra remained a top box office draw for nearly a decade, and is successful as both singer and actor, led the New York radio personality Williams to nickname him chairman of the board of show business. The name stuck for the rest of his long career. At the time when restraints on sexual and social behavior had begun to loosen a bit, the high-living Sinatra, who enjoyed gambling and womanizing, became the popular press the embodiment of the swinger, a concept repeatedly invoked by his album titles. In the 60s, Sinatra appeared to be American quintessential middle-aged playboy. Ocean's 11 was the first of 3 Sinatra films to feature the stars surrounded by the hard-drinking, high-living clique nicknamed the Rat Pack, that include Dean Martin, Peter Lawford, Sammy Davis Jr., and Joey Bishop. The group was outgrowth of a social circle that had centered on Humphrey Bogart, who died in 1957. The Rat Packers would appear together in 3 more light-hearted capers: Sergeant 3, 4 for Texas, and Robin and the Seven Hoods. He was the other side of Sinatra. As carefully as he plumbed his music after 1960, he seemed largely to be walking through his movie. Las Vegas Playground and Kennedy Campaign. One of the Rat Pack's favorite playgrounds was Las Vegas, where Sinatra was a pioneer entertainer. In 1953, he bought a 2% interest in the Sands Hotel and eventually became a corporate vice-president. He earned $100 million a week in his frequent performance at the Sands, and he used the hotel for recording albums and making movies. After supporting Alda Stevenson's bid for the presidency in 1956, Sinatra worked avidly for John Kennedy in 1960 and supervised the newly elected president's inaugural gala in Washington in January 1961. But his pro-Kennedy sentiments cooled after the president canceled a week to visit Sinatra's house because the singer had played host to the Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana and his associates. In 1963, the singer lost his Nevada gambling license after Giancana was seen in the Cal Neva gambling casino, in which the singer held a major interest. The license was restored in 1981. By the 70s, Sinatra has turned to the right. He became a supporter of Richard Nixon and Donald Reagan. Sinatra's recording career entered a major new phase when he formed his own record company, Reprise, in late 60s. Since the new label overlapped his Capitol contract for about a year, he recorded for both labels. In 1963, he sold his record company to Warner Brothers, retaining a 1/3 interest. In association with the Warner Brothers, he also set up his own independent film production company, Airtains. Beginning with a Ring Ding Ding in 1961, and for the next 20 years, Sinatra recorded more than 30 albums for Reprise. By this time, his voice had hardened and concerned, except for Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim. A remarkable 1967 collaboration with the Brazilian songwriter, guitarist and singer, in which he sang very softly. His ballad singing that tended toward the stentorian, often with a noticeable edge of macho thoughtness. Looking back brings its rewards. Increasingly, his albums had a self-consciously retrospective air. I Remember Tommy looked back of these days with the Dorsey Band, Sinatra's Sinatra, consisted entirely of the newly recorded Sinatra favorites. His 50th birthday in 1965 was celebrated with the release of two deliberately monumental albums, September of My Years and A Man and Its Music, an anthology of his career that he narred and sang. September of My Years was the title anthem. The Middle Age Nostalgia was a custom written by Sammy Cahn and Jimmy Van Heusen and arranged by Gordon Jenkins, won Grammys for Albums of the Year and the Best Male Vocal Performance. Sinatra scored a double triumph in 1966 when A Man and Its Music was voted Album of the Year, and Strangers in the Night was the number one single in 11 years. Won Record of the Year. The string of hits continued to a top 5 hit, That's Life and Something Stupid, a duet with his daughter Nancy. In 1969, he had a substantial hit with My Way, in adaptation of a French ballad, Mon Habitude, but Claude François, Jacques Revaux, and Gilles Thibault, with English lyrics with Paul Anka. Long Away with New York, New York, which he recorded for a 3-disc set, trilogy, Past, Present, Future, it became one of the signature songs of his later years. The moment when Sinatra and his style of music seemed the least fashionable was the late 60s, when the youthful rock counterculture dominated popular music. Sinatra was no fan of rock and roll, having once dismissed his music, sung, played, and written for the most part of the cretinous goons. He did make tentative efforts to adapt to changing style, tries his hand at songs by Jim Croce, Jimmy Webb, Neil Diamond, Neil Sedka, John Denver, Paul Simon, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, Peter Allen, Billy Joel, and the Beatles, among the others. But even singing soft rock, he never sounded entirely comfortable. His surprise marriage in 1966 to the actress Mia Farrow, then 21, 30 years his junior, seemed in part to be a search for a youthful connection. They were divorced in 1968. As a film actor, Sinatra continued to work steadily through the 60s. Besides its Rat Pack Jones, his films include Come Blow Your Horn, Von Ryan Express, Tony Rome, The Detective, and Dirty Dingus Maggie. Retirement, could it be? Doing that this way. In June 1971, Sinatra announced his retirement during a gala concert at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, but it lasted only 2 years. He returned with the album All Blue Eyes Is Back, the title in which he gave his last show business nickname. In 1976, he married for the 4th time to Barbara Blackley Marx, who had been married to Zeppo Marx. She survives him along his daughters, his son, and 2 grandchildren. His recordings and films become less frequent. In 1980, after 6 years hiatus, he released the trilogy Past, Present, Future, a concept album in which Gordon Jenkins' oratorio imagined the singer as an intergalactic traveler. It was followed by the moody She Shot Me Down and the jazzy LA Is My Lady. Sinatra returned to film in 1977 with a television movie, Contract on Cherry Street, which was poorly received and was the last major Hollywood role, an aging detective in the first daily sting. In 1984, he briefly appeared as himself in Cannonball Run 2. For his 75th birthday in 1990, Capitol and Reprise released extensive, elaborately packaged Sinatra retrospectives. Columbia had released a 6-disc anthology 4 years earlier. Sinatra worked vigorously for the 80s presidential campaign of his close friend Ronald Reagan and produced and directed a 3-hour inaugural gala that was shown in an edited form on television in 1981. In 1985, he was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian award. Even after he stopped making records and movies, Sinatra continued to give concerts. In the early 80s, he was paid $2 million for 4 concerts in Argentina and $2 million for 9 concerts in Sun City, South Africa. Sensitive appearance by Sinatra, who had always supported civil rights causes, drew sharp criticism from anti-apartheid groups. In 1982, he signed a $16 million 3-year contract with the Golden Nuggets Hotel in Atlantic City. In 1988 and 1989, Sinatra was still listed in Forbes magazine as among the 40 richest entertainers, with an annual income estimated at $14 million in 1989 and $12 million in 1988. But when he was required to submit a financial statement to Nevada Gaming Commission for a renewal his gaming license in 1981, he claimed a surprisingly modest net worth of just over $14 million. Sinatra's life was rocked in 1986 by the publication of His Way, Kitty Kelly's best-selling unauthorized biography, which focused on his volatile personality, his personal feats, his streak of violence, and his relationship over the years with organized crime figures. It was a harsh portrait that nevertheless acknowledged Sinatra's role as a musician icon. The concert giver and singer of solo duets. Sinatra turned the world in 1989 with Sammy Davis Jr. and Lisa Minnelli in a concert package billed as the ultimate event. It was one of the grander bills in a rigorous touring schedule that he maintained into his late 70s. He toured with Shirley MacLaine in 1992. Increasingly, during his performance in later years, he resorted to using electronic prompters at the front of the stage to read the lyrics. In 1993, at the age of 77, Sinatra and a thriving recording career come back with a Frank Sinatra Duets, a collection of 13 Sinatra standards re-recorded with such pop stars as Barbara Streisand, Tony Bennett, Aretha Franklin, Luther Vandross, and Bono of the Irish rock group U2. The record was widely criticized for being the engineering stunt, since none of the guest singers were actually in recording studio with Sinatra, who recorded its parts separately. The record nevertheless sold over 2 million copies in the United States. A year later, there was a weaker follow-up using a different roster of guests. Sinatra's last concert was on February 25th in 1995 at the Palm Desert Marriott Ballroom in the Palm Desert Cliff. Assessing his own abilities in 1963, Sinatra sounded a note that was quintessentially characteristic, forlorn and thought. Being an 18-carat maniac depressive and having lived a life of violent emotional contradiction, I have a overacute capacity of sadness as well as election, he said. Whatever else has been said about me personally is unimportant. When I sing, I believe. I'm honest. Swinging and films. The Singer. With the November 1995 release of Frank Sinatra's complete works on recipes, the entire catalogs of labels available on compact disc. Here is an selected discography. Tommy Dorsey, Frank Sinatra, All-Time Greatest Hits. The Voice, Frank Sinatra, The Voice, The Columbia Years. Swing Easy, Songs for Your Lovers. In the Wee Small Hours, Songs on Swinging Lovers. This is Sinatra, Close to You. A Swinging Affair, Where Are You? Come Fly With Me, Ring-a-Ding-Ding, September of My Years, Moonlight Sinatra, Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim, She Shut Me Down, Frank Sinatra duets. The Actor. Frank Sinatra appeared in 58 movies, winning an Oscar for his performance as Maggio, the doomed GI from the Here to Eternity. He played everything from a shy sailor in Anchorage Away, to thought army investigator in The Manchurian Candidate, a tormented drug addict in The Man with the Golden Arm, and a daring prisoner of war from Ryan Express. Here are some hits films. I Got a Niger, Anchorage Away, On the Town, From Here to Eternity, The Man with the Golden Arm, Guys and Dolls, High Society, Paul Joy, The Joker is Wild, Some Come Running, Ocean's 11, The Manchurian Candidate, Come Blow Your Horn, Robin and the Seven Hoods, Von Ryan Express, Tony Rome.